Hi friends, this is suristahel. Thanks for taking some time to join me again on Doing Things on Purpose, the podcast that empowers women to take charge of their time, health, relationships, and money by doing things on purpose. In today's mom check-in, I invite you to just stop whatever it is that you're doing right now, if possible. Let's spend a few minutes just breathing to calm the mind together. We're going to practice something called boxed breathing, which everyone from yogis to the Navy SEALs use to quickly balance the nervous system. So we're going to be breathing in to the count of 4, hold for 4, breathe out for 4, and hold for 4 again. And then we'll repeat this sequence twice more. So let's begin. Breathe in, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4. Breathe out, 2, 3, 4. And hold, 2, 3, 4. Breathe in, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4. Breathe out, 2, 3, 4. And hold, 2, 3, 4. Breathe in, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4. Breathe out, 2, 3, 4. And hold, 2, 3, 4. Now let your breath return to its natural rhythm and see how you feel. There are many other breathing variations you can try. I quite like the 4-4-6-2 sequence, where you exhale longer than you inhale. Or you can also try the 4 in, 7 hold, and 8 out sequence. What this does is to balance or calm our nervous system, because breathing in naturally increases your heart rate, stimulating your sympathetic fight and flight system, while breathing out slows your heart rate, activating your parasympathetic rest and relax system. And we need both of these systems to work in balance with each other. So know that you can always return to the breath in this way whenever you feel stressed or overwhelmed. It doesn't always work completely, but I think it always helps. So let's move on to today's episode titled, When Can We Afford a House? This week, I wanted to give you a quick peek into what happened in our household last week to prompt this discussion. As you might know, I have 2 girls aged 9 and 11. They play a lot with each other, and they've been dreaming about buying a house and living together when they grow up, so they can have all the things that little and big girls dream of, such as pets and a big garden where they can live happily ever after. So last week they asked me, Mommy, if we put together the money that Daddy saves in our account each month, when can we afford to buy a house? I loved this question because, of course, kids really have no idea how much a house even costs these days. I mean, let's be honest, many adults don't either. So how much does a house cost? From my quick Google search, as of early 2024, the average home price in Switzerland, where we live, averages 1.2 million US dollars. In the US, it averages around 400,000, and in Malaysia, where I was born, it's around 95,000 US dollars, or 450,000 Malaysian ringgit. Of course, we all know that if you want a comfortably sized home in a good location, that price is going to perhaps double or even triple. But let's just work with these average prices for now. So to answer my kids' question, let's first find out, how much do they even have? We've been saving around 110 US dollars, or exactly 100 Swiss francs combined, for our kids per month since birth. So that means 50 Swiss francs per child. I would love for this number to move up to 200 Swiss francs or even 400 Swiss francs per month combined, but it's just not the case for us right now. Before learning how to invest, we saved their money the way most parents do, in a youth savings account, returning around 1% annually, which in Switzerland is considered high. In this account, they have now a combined amount of around 14,500 US dollars. I'm as amazed as you how even the small amounts that we set aside has added up over time. And then after learning to invest since 1.5 years ago, we've saved about 2,000 US dollars for them in a brokerage account, which we manage. Currently, it's returned 37% in the past 1 year. So from the original 2,000 savings, their investments are currently valued at around 2,700. I'm quoting everything in US dollars to keep things simple. So then, assuming my kids would want to buy a house by the time they're 40, they'll have around 30 years to save and invest for it. So let's calculate how much they'll have in 30 years. First of all, Google and open NerdWallet's compound interest calculator. I'll include the link in the show notes. Then I look at their youth savings account, assuming that we keep this money there. As I said, the current balance is 14,500. So let's type this in as the initial deposit in NerdWallet's calculator. We're no longer funding this account, so the contribution amount will be 0. Years of growth will be 13 for simplicity's sake until our eldest reaches 22, which is the age limit for this type of account. And let's assume that the return will stay at 1% per annum. So in 13 years, when the money's taken out, it will have grown to 16,500. That's a gain of just 2,000 or a return on investment of 13%. And next, we have to think about what happens to this money when they're 22 and they take this money out. There's still 17 years of growth possible before they reach 40. So for the rest of the 17 years, let's assume that we deposit this money into their brokerage account. Refresh that calculator and let's input 16,500 back into the calculator, which was what we took out from the youth savings account. Let's assume that the market returns 10% annually, which is the historical average rate of return for an index fund or ETF tracking the global world market like VT or VWRL, assuming we reinvest all dividends. We put 0 contributions in and let it run for the remaining 17 years. In 17 years, by the time the girls turn around 40, this amount will have grown to 83,400. That's from the original 16,500 in principal, plus 66,900 in compound interest gained. That's a 405% return on investment, which blows my mind. Secondly, we look at their smaller brokerage account that we set up a 1.5 years ago. It has a current value of 2,700. Let's input this value in the calculator. We add 110 contribution per month into it, which is what we're currently able to save for the girls. And let's let that run at a modest 10% annual rate of return again for the next 30 years. In 30 years, this account will have returned 274,000 by the time my girls reach 40. That's 42,300 in principal money saved, which has resulted in a 231,700 in interest gained over 30 years. This equals a 548% return on investment. So what's the result? When I combine these two savings that they currently have, their invested savings will have returned approximately $357,000 in 30 years. Of course, there are many other variables that we can consider. Firstly, if their current brokerage portfolio continues to return 37% as it currently has in the past year, even if we never put any new money in, their investment portfolio would grow from $2,700 right now to a whopping $34 million in 30 years. That's mind-blowing. And let's not go crazy because it is wishful thinking. The markets do need to go up and down to remain healthy, albeit with a general upward trend. So 37% over the lifetime of these 30 years is probably not viable. On the other hand, what if the markets only end up averaging 7% annually instead of the 10%? If all else remains as initially calculated, my girls would only end up with $201,000 instead of $357,000 to buy their house in 30 years' time. Thirdly, another assumption could be that after 15 years, when the girls turn around 25, they're already working and can perhaps fund their investments above the current amount that mom and dad are saving for them. Maybe even up to $1,800 per month combined. That's quite a lot, but that would allow them to even reach $1 million by the time they're 40. Lastly, and probably the biggest variable and contributor to wealth growth, is if we as parents are able to contribute even a little more for our kids today. Because even if you start with zero right now, a $200 monthly investment would amount to $412,500 in 30 years at the average 10% annual rate of return. That's even more than what we've just calculated for our girls, despite their existing initial savings, but at our lower $110 per month savings rate. And what's the magic number? If you can invest $500 per month for your kids from today, it can return $1 million in 30 years. Again, with the assumed 10% average rate of annual return. Of course, nothing is ever guaranteed. And would we even want to help our kids be millionaires by 40 without any effort of their own? Probably not. Nobody wants to spoil their kids, but I think it's just a nice to know number and something to perhaps motivate many of us to start investing if we haven't already. Never forget the 2 golden rules of investment, which is the best time to invest was yesterday, the second best time is today. I do agree, but it does help to time your entry a little bit when the markets are slightly down, but set a deadline for yourself. And the second golden rule is to start investing as much as you can, as early as you can, because the longer you stay invested, the higher your compounded rate of return and the lower your risk of loss. So maybe your parents, like mine, never taught you about investing. Understandably, it's a little tough to play catch up, to both save and invest for your kids as well as for yourself and your spouse for your old age. But just do your very best right now. Let's give ourselves time to slowly break this generational cycle of money illiteracy, to start good money habits today that we can happily pass down to our children tomorrow and their children. So back to the question about when can my kids actually afford to buy a house? Assuming they pay fully by cash with $357,000, maybe not in 30 years, unless they decide to settle down in a more affordable country compared to Switzerland, or if they earn enough to save more than we ever could for them each month. But in 40 years, probably, if they maintain our current savings rate of $110 per month for them, which would make them reach $1 million by the time they're 50. So really, it's up to them, as it should be. But we've certainly helped them start off on the right foot, and that's all we can do. What about you? If you haven't already, I wholeheartedly encourage you to play with the NerdWallet calculator to see how your savings and investments can grow over time. Again, I'll link to the calculator I used on the show notes at suristahel.com/22 for this episode 22. If you need more help and you'd like to read my comprehensive guide on money and investing, just go to suristahel.com/money. Or if you want to listen to my podcasts on money, go to my website, click on podcasts, and click on the category money. You can also follow me on Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram for short tips on money and managing life with a family. Finally, I'm always happy to receive your questions in my inbox at suristahel@gmail.com. That's all I have for you today. I hope this has been helpful. Thanks again for listening to my little podcast, Doing Things on Purpose with me, Suri, and I'll catch you again next time.